you talked about the role of quitting.
Mm.
And I couldn't agree more that this concept of sort of, you know, always push through. And I think if you had owned that idea in the way that it's talked about in our culture, you'd probably still be a TV journalist. So, what is the difference between quitting what you thought was your dream job, or what is the balance between quitting what you thought was your dream job and trusting your intuition to, do something outside of that that seems risky and unknown and scary? Help us understand how, what was going on in
Yeah.
your mind, because there's so many people right now listening that are like, that's me. That's I got a good thing. I want to chase my dreams. I want to trust my gut, but I'm not quite sure what it's telling me.
Yeah. And I think learning to like get still and actually hear our own gut is so important. And I think it's so hard. I think that, I believe, Chase, I believe we all have this knowing, right? Like to your point, there's so many people probably listening right now, watching right now, that if they were to just get still for a minute and check in with their gut, even if they're rusty on doing this, right? They
Hmm.
usually know if they're in the right job or in the right relationship, or if they need to maybe end a friendship, or they know if they have more inside of them, like and it's on their heart to write a book or to take that first step and start photography, right? Whatever that is, if we get still, I really believe we all have that knowing. And I think that learning, one of the things I talk a lot about a lot in the book is, how do you start building that muscle again of intuition and learning to trust it? Because I think, for something, it's a life for so many of us, it's a lifelong journey of really learning how. And it's like we keep refining our intuition as we go. But what I see happening now, and I have the blessing of mentoring, so many entrepreneurs now and a lot of women. And what I see happening so often is that, as we go on in life, we literally stop learning how to hear our own gut and stop listening to it. And I think part of that is because, first of all, the noise of self-doubt and our own inner critic gets so loud all around us that sometimes it's hard to even break through and know what is our own knowing anymore. We then often have, other people's opinions. And sometimes that can come in the form of people we love so much, like our inner circle, our friends, our family, who love us and often, and usually they'll mean well, but they often can't see the potential of our own hopes and dreams because they're seeing it through the lens of their own limitations, right? And their own fear and their own life experience. And so all of a sudden we have, all the noise of and by the way, anyone who's been an entrepreneur or is right now, often we all share, right? We share an experience where, at some point, I mean, I can share my own. At some point, when I was getting no traction in my business the first 3 years, I had so many people say, like, are you sure you should have quit your job? Are you sure you're qualified to be doing this? Are you like, I love you, but I'm worried about you? Are you, all those things, right? And we have to be so careful because at some point that noise can get so loud too. Then, if anyone out there who's going through an experience like I went through for a number of years, I had, when I first launched the business, I had these experts that I would put on a pedestal. And in my case, it was all the department stores that, as a Denny's waitress, I would save my tip money to buy a makeup product in one of those department stores. And I just thought, wow, if they carry my product, this is going to be amazing. And all the, QVC and the beauty retailers, I put them on a pedestal. And so for the first 3 years of my business, when all of them said no over and over and over and said I wasn't the right fit, or I needed to not use real women as models, I needed to do the I call it antiquated standard of beauty, which is like flawless Photoshop skin. They all told me that's what I need to do to sell product. And it was 3 years of them basically saying, and some of them in these actual words, you're not the right fit for us or for our customers. And, so we get experts telling us that, or for a lot of us, it's just like no traction that we thought was going to happen with our dream or our idea. or our creation or our sales of our product or business. So we have all of that. And then we turn the news on and we're like, right. So all of this is going on, and it's so hard if we don't take a big step back. And this is one of the things that, again, I share so much that I did wrong too, that'll hopefully save people a lot of nights crying themselves to sleep. But one of the things I did right was like learn how to really get still and hear my own knowing, and my own knowing that said you're supposed to keep going or you're not. And to me, trusting ourselves, when we learn to hear ourselves and trust ourselves,
Yeah.
that's the victory in life. The victory isn't like, oh, building $1 billion company, or oh, this. To me, it's learning how to get still and trust our knowing, and know that we're on our own path of becoming all of who we are, and who we're born to be. And I think what happens, because it's so easy to let this happen, is all the noise from everyone else and our own self-doubt, all of it gets so loud that it becomes so much easier to just like stay in our comfort zone and not go after the dream when it seems hard, or not keep going, even though, you know what I mean? Even though like we feel like we should, it becomes easier to just stay in our comfort zone, which comes at the price of, I think, it starts to chip away at our soul. We start to risk talking ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. Not to be all dramatic on your show, but like that's
No.
really, to me, what it is. It's like we literally can talk ourselves out of our own truth and never become the person we're born to be. And how many people do we know that have done that? So many, the majority, right? And that's what I think is the biggest challenge as a creator, as someone with a dream on your heart, as someone who knows you have more to give or serve or love, is how do you step into that? Yeah.
It's so true, and like it's hard to overstate. I want to join in your symphony here. This idea that the advice comes from people that you admire, you've spent so much time learning about and thinking about, as you said, and some of the people that are closest to you that love you dearly and certainly don't want to see you in pain. And I think those voices are trusted is part of what makes playing through and trusting your gut and following your intuition, all the things that you said, so hard. And so, to underscore your point, quiet, still awareness of who you are and what you believe in. It it sounds easy just to say listen to that, but I believe it's hard. And so I'm wondering if you can share some of the specifics. Do you go on a 10-day Vipassana no talking retreat? Do you go on a long sojourn in the mountains? Is it a daily meditation, mindfulness, prayer practice? Like what are some of the things
Yeah.
that you did to actually quiet the noise? Because right now everyone would like to quiet those voices in their head, but
Yeah.
help us see it through your eyes.
I've never done one of those retreats, but I would love to. I would love
My
to. It's
wife,
like,
my wife is a super retreater. She is like, she teaches meditation and mindfulness, so she's always gone for 10 days and comes back like this enlightened being, and I'm toiling away and doing the dishes or whatever. But I too endeavored to do that one day. But I want to know what your process is.
yeah. So, for me, and I think everyone can do this. I think that it all starts, and this is how I started, because this, at the end of the day, my book is not just some big business success story. My book is really a story about a girl who went from not believing in herself, to believing in herself, and not knowing how to hear my own intuition, right? To learning how, and then learning how to trust it. And really a journey of going from doubting I'm enough to knowing I'm enough. And, I just think, it's the story of so many other people right now, as well, on their own journey of learning to do that, learning to believe in themselves and trust themselves and know they're enough. And for me, it started with really basic, simple, like taking 3 to 5 minutes a day. That's it. And so for some people, they have chaos going on in their house. They have kids running everywhere. They have all this stuff, right? Especially right now in this season that we're in. And so, it can be as simple even as, going and sitting in the car. And a lot of parents will understand that one. Going and sitting in the car by yourself for 2 minutes, or, going into your bathroom and closing the door. And it starts just, I think the best way for me, I've been able to really build my intuition over the years, is just to take 2 to 5 minutes and actually start to learn, what does it even feel like? What do I even think and feel in my knowing about anything, right? And I think for a lot of people that start this, because for a lot of people, hearing their own knowing, it'll be the first time ever, or the first time in a long time, once they start doing this again. And I think that it's critical to everything in life, to get back in touch with this. But, it can be as simple as 2 to 5 minutes of literally just sitting there and just saying, what do I feel and think? And, asking yourself a question and seeing if you answer it. For a lot of people, by the way, this is how they hear God or whatever faith it is they practice, through their own gut or their own intuition. And, I think it's something that we all have to give ourselves grace in the process of, because, I think, well, at least what happened for me, and I know a lot of other people too, is that, you try to do it. And just like trying to meditate for the first time, you're like, oh, I tried to do it, but I'm running through my to-do list in my own mind, and, all the things of the day. And like, that's so normal. And you just have to give yourself grace and really work on building that muscle. The other thing is to, really start to pay attention and think through, are there experiences in your life where you trusted yourself, that gut feeling, and it worked? And really reflect on those, right? And pay attention to them. And also, are there times when you just had this gut feeling, like maybe you're dating and you have this feeling like, oh, he's sketchy, and he says his phone broke for 3 days in a row. And he or she is lying, right? But you make the decision to ignore your gut. And then, we always learn the
It
truth in
plays
the
out.
end. It plays out.
It plays
But
out.
like paying attention to like all the times, because for all of us, we have those moments in life continually. And a lot of times we just go so fast through life. We're so busy. We live almost numb in a way. And we disconnect or disassociate from those moments that are our most powerful teachers. And listen, I think I continuously do this to this day, as I look back. And one of the things, when I look back at some of the biggest miscalculations I've had or mistakes I've made, a lot of times they come down to not listening to my gut, and or doubting it, thinking, oh, one story just to share is, after 3 years of hearing no from, all of these beauty retailers, because I launched the company in my living room and couldn't afford to hire anyone for the first 3 years. And my husband and I were just kind of doing every job we possibly could do. And I got to the point, it was so scrappy, Chase. Like, my middle name is Marie, and Marie got her own email address at one point. So it was Marie at itcosmetics.com. And she was heading customer service and PR. And like, if this were today, Marie would be emailing, Chase Jarvis, great news. Our founder's available for an interview. And like, she would pitch Good Morning America, everybody, and often get no reply, or ignored. But Marie hustled, and, we did so many scrappy things for years when we couldn't afford to hire anyone, and when all these retailers were saying no. And then I'll never forget, one powerful story to share, in case someone listening needs to hear this right now, and maybe they're going through a season of rejection, or they're going through a season of being told they're not enough, or just feeling like they're not enough. I remember, and by the way, I would email LinkedIn, everyone in LinkedIn who worked at QVC or Sephora or anywhere. I would email them and send them product. And it was just 3 years of hustling, and everyone saying no. And I'd finally gotten a guy named Alan Burke, who headed all of beauty at QVC, to review my products and get on a phone call with me. And he is in the beauty industry. He's a legend, right? So he's responsible for bringing all of the really amazing department store brands we all know onto QVC, which QVC is a live television shopping channel. So it's broadcast to 100 million homes live, and their sales goals are super high. And what I learned is,
I've watched your clip so many times. It's
oh, you have?
incredible. Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's amazing. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but it is.
I
If you
didn't know
haven't
that you've
watched it,
seen
yeah,
that.
of course, it's incredible.
Well, you know what I didn't, so I didn't know a lot of things going into this experience in my life, but I learned from other entrepreneurs that you can sell more in an hour show on QVC than all year in department stores, because so many people watch it and they have such a large, loyal customer following. And so anyhow, I finally got Alan Burke on a phone call, and I thought, okay, we were down to no money. I didn't know how we were going to survive. And I'll never forget, like the phone rang, and he's like, "Hello, Jamie, Alan Burke from QVC." And I just thought, oh my gosh, if this legend is going to be on the phone with me and spend his precious time, it's got to be a yes, right? It's got to be a yes. And I was like, Alan, and I was trying to muster up every ounce of confidence, and I was trying to tell myself, like, they're lucky to have us, like be confident, Jamie. They're lucky to have us, even though they had said no for years, right? And so I was pacing around. I'll never forget, I was pacing around our office, which was our living room in our apartment. And I said, Alan, it's Jamie Kern Lima. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. And he says, well, I want to let you know we've reviewed your products with all of our buyers. It's a unanimous agreement that it's a no. We're going to pass. You're not right for QVC or for our customers. You're not the right fit. But thank you. And so right away I went into like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I tried to like pour my heart out again to getting him to care. And he's like, thank you for loving QVC, but it's a no. And I remember this moment because tears were streaming down my face, right? Because I didn't know how we were going to stay in business. And I thanked him for his time. And I literally crawled under the covers in my bed and cried myself to sleep. And then woke up the next morning hoping it was a dream. It's a bad dream. Have you ever had that happen where you get really bad news and then right? And you wake up and you're like, oh, it was real. And so that happened 3 days in a row. And I remember this time, and these are the moments I think that define us in life when we can really learn to hear our knowing. I talk a lot in the book about creating this imaginary toolbox of things I pull from. Like it could be quotes, it could be excerpts from your show, right? It could be, I have underdog stories. I have things that just remind me of who I am, of what I'm made of, and I pull from them when I need it. And so I was, doing that, and I was also just checking in, and even sobbing myself to sleep 3 days in a row. When I would get still and check in with my own gut, it kept saying I was supposed to keep going. And these are the moments I think that define our life, because I didn't know at that time I would create what's now the largest beauty company in the country, right? Like I didn't know any of that. All I knew is for 3 years, everyone said no. And I finally got the head guy, Alan Burke, on a phone call, legend in the beauty space. And he tells me I'm not the right fit for QVC or for him. And 3 days later, after crying I check in with my gut, and it says, you're supposed to keep going. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like you're not supposed to quit. And that knowing and making that decision to trust it is how I kept going. And, to put a really fun bow on this story, in case anyone listening needs this right now.
We all need it, Jamie.
I just think, you know what, Chase, it's like sometimes we go through these seasons of rejection and they don't make sense and they hurt. And it's so easy to have them all equate to just self-doubt in our own head and doubt of our dreams. And that's why I just think checking in with our knowing and trusting it is so important. But I kept going and kept going. And when I shared this story in the book, and it's a long one, so I'll skip it now, but I'll skip the how. But eventually, through a trade show, through a really cool moment, through a gutsy moment of me taking a big risk, got a yes to get one shot on QVC. So this is after 3 years of no's. We got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our personal and our company combined. And I finally got one shot and our first really big yes to go on QVC. But here's what that meant, Chase. It meant, and we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? And barely staying alive. And I learned, okay, you get one shot. You're going to get one shot to present your product live on QVC, and you're going to get a 10-minute window. And you either need to hit the sales goal or not come back. I was like, okay. And what that meant was I had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. We were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day on our site. That is over 6,000 units of our concealer.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, live on live television, no script, no teleprompter, nothing. And then to top it all off, and anyone who runs a business where they're making product, they'll understand this part, but it was a consignment deal. And what that meant was we had to pay for all the own inventory ourselves, ship it in, and we wouldn't get paid for anything except for what ended up selling in that 10-minute window. And whatever didn't sell would be shipped back to us. And in our case,
you own it. Yeah, you own it then, right?
And because we were only doing 2 to 3 orders a day, it was like, oh, if anything got shipped back to us, I mean, there was nowhere to sell it. Like we would be completely out of business and bankrupt. And so it was a really tough decision. But after 3 years of everyone saying no, we decided to take this risk and applied for 22 SBA loans that all said no. And the 23rd SBA loan gave us enough money to cover just the inventory cost of this one shot on QVC. So it's a moment that would end up being one of the most defining moments in my whole career, but also life so far. And I think it's a universal moment because a lot of times all of us will have moments where we know what we stand for, we know what we believe in, but then all of a sudden our values are challenged, or everything's on the line. And that's what happened here. We made all the inventory, did everything, and we're ready to get our one shot on QVC. And I was so stressed out and felt so much pressure because I knew this one shot would like literally make or break our whole company. So I flew out to QVC a week early before the one airing, and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot, praying, crying, so overwhelmed because what ended up happening was, we hired third-party consultants that are experts, and they help so many people sell their products live on TV. They're amazing. But they all told us the same thing, which is that, okay, if you want your best shot at success in this 10-minute window, you need to use these type of models that all have perfect skin. And I'm like, okay, but that's exactly why I'm not doing the business. Like I'm doing this to try and actually shift culture and beauty and do something bigger than myself. And I have this vision that I'm going to, use, models that have real skin problems and all ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones. And they would just look at me and tell me, like, listen, if you want our advice and the best shot at success, here's what you need to do. And so I started arguing with them and saying, okay, but I get that's how it's always been done. And I get that's the only way it's been successful so far. But intuitively, if I'm sitting at home watching this TV show and I see models that don't look like me, how do I know the product's going to work for me? And we would kind of get into it. And I was like, what if I just take my makeup off on national TV and show my bright red rosacea? And they were mortified at that idea. You know what I mean? And so it was really tricky because sometimes we have moments in life where, like, we have to decide, do you put the experts on a pedestal or your own intuition on one? You know what I mean? And that's hard, and especially hard when everything's on the line. So I sat in that car and cried because that just felt like the right thing at the time. And just, it felt like such a big decision. And I thought, okay, well, what if I do what they're saying to do and then I become successful, then I try it my way? I'm like, well, I know you can't fake authenticity. You know what I mean? And I would have regrets if I did that. So I knew what I needed to do, but it's like sometimes we know the right thing to do, but it's the hard thing to do. And I sat there in that car and and I think a lot of creators or people that have vision and big dreams will be able to connect with this, where I just sat there and said, why am I doing what I'm doing and who am I doing this for? And I kept imagining, like, who would that woman be watching on the other end? And if I was going to get one shot, and that's it. And I kept imagining like a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry for some reason. I imagined it like who was too busy to remember she mattered and that she's beautiful and all those things. And if she was going to give me a few seconds of her precious time and turn the television on and see me, like I'd rather have her see me showing women who look like her, calling them beautiful, meaning it, and have her not buy anything. Like I'd rather do that than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was like I knew what I had to do, but I was also scared. And you know, the to complete the story, the 10-minute.
We love, like, this is why this format exists. Please, Jamie,
Yeah.
just keep going. This is amazing.
Well, thank you for sharing these. I mean, I just feel like we're all in this together. You know what I mean? And it's part of why I wrote this book, but also like part of why I'm so excited to be on your show. And thank you again for having me. Is I think when we share these real stories, right? Because no one would know these things when they just go, "Oh, there's a really
She made it."
Yeah, totally. And that's all you ever see online. Oh, she made
Yeah.
it. So, you know, but these are universal experiences, I think. And a lot of people don't talk about them. And when you look on social media, you just see everyone's highlight reel and you don't see the rejection or the pain or any of the things that we go through. And when we don't see them, then we just feel alone in them, you know? And
Yeah,
so,
and we're comparing our day-to-day crappy experiences of forgetting to turn the dryer on before you go to bed so that when you wake up your clothes are wet. We have the experience of getting a parking ticket, and we're comparing all those aspects of our lives to everyone else's highlight reel that you see on TV, or in your case, the product in the store. And I agree, it's toxic. And I want to say thank you for having the courage to be as vulnerable as you are.
What did you believe was possible then? And did you learn to trust your gut then? Like, when did you start learning to trust your intuition, to hear those voices? Because I get impulses too. I get hits of what I'm supposed to do. And I think some people don't get them. So you share a lot of tips in the book, by the way. So we're not going to be able to share everything on this interview. Read the book. Jamie shares a ton of tips in this book to help you on your journey. If you're a small business, her advice is incredible. If you're growing your business, if you're a big business, if you're a leader, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to be more creative, all of the chapters in that book give you nuggets of wisdom and advice and tips to help you on your journey. It's like really is for everyone, just so you know. So you're going to get some tips, but Jamie, in terms of that intuition and gut, tell us about that Denny's waitress that you were and what was possible then to you.
Yeah. So I've always felt, and I've always felt deep down inside like I was destined to serve in a big way or do something that impacted other people on all of our own journey. I always had that inkling, didn't know what it was. And working as a Denny's waitress, this is so funny. Working as a Denny's waitress, oh my gosh. So the Denny, and I was working to try and save up for school and all that, pay my way through school. And Denny's, it's so funny how so many things teach us lessons, right? So I won't get into this too much, but like the Denny's I worked at, the kitchen was a mess in the sense that they would take an hour to get pancakes out sometimes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are getting mad and they're leaving because it's taking an hour to get pancakes. And I'm not getting a tip. And I really need a tip because I'm trying to pay through school. And so I learned to talk to people and try to be like, and try to just connect with them and ask about their stories and that whole thing. And it probably planted a seed in me of understanding the importance of operations of a business and the right operational infrastructure. So even as a, in that whole different industry as a Denny's waitress, I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right? Of where we're going to be. But, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well. Or, oh, I decided to go against everyone else. I trusted my gut and here's what happened, right? And I think for all of us, it's every area of life. I mean, this is something a lot of your community might relate to, is like, or not, but if you've ever dated a sketchy guy, or you have a friend where you're just like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. Something's not adding up. We kind of know it, right? Like so many people can hopefully relate to this at some point in their life, but they've dated someone where they're like, I don't really believe him that his phone just broke or that he just like disappeared for a day, right? I don't think he, and you can choose, we all choose like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to stay in love. Or, you know what? Like, okay, I'm done. Like we all know. And I feel like we continue building those experiences in life. And then we look back on them and it's like, now I'm able, looking back on so much of this journey, I'm able to really know that some of my biggest mistakes and misjudgments and miscalculations came when I went against that inkling inside, right? And I trusted people that are touted visionaries or experts. And it's good to trust experts and visionaries, except if your deep gut inkling goes against it, because knowing that you stayed to that through line of authenticity for you and what you're called to do is so important. And learning how to tune in and hear that can literally change the whole course of your life. And one big example of that is probably one of the greatest business lessons I've ever learned and life lessons. And it came down to this moment where after 3 years of hearing no's, and by the way, John, at one point, I think it was 2 years into our business, I actually was able to and just to share a scrappy tip for anyone out there, like really building their business who can't afford to hire people, I was like emailing everyone on LinkedIn. I would find anyone that worked at the company. I would just try to get in some way, send them products, ask them to, and I'd finally like hustled my way into a guy named Alan Burke, who was the head of Olive Beauty at QVC. He had built this multi-billion dollar beauty industry there, department there. And I got through to his assistant and I begged her to like have him look at our product and get us meetings and all those things in front of the buyers. And anyways, long story short, I got a call saying he is going to take a call with me and he's reviewed the products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this head of everything, Alan Burke, if he's going to spend his precious time like calling me, it's going to be good. Right. And I was so excited. And I was pacing around waiting for the call in our office, which was our living room. And Paula was there and I was like, I was freaking out. He called. And right when I answered the phone, obviously I was like, I didn't know what we were going to do, right? We were down to no money. I was freaking out. And I said, okay, to my head, I'm like, they're lucky to have us. He's lucky to get us, like all these things, right? Pumping myself up. And I got on the phone and he said, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke from QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to talk to you and this whole thing. And anyways, he got right to the point and he said, we've reviewed your products with all the buyers here in the beauty department. And it's unanimous that it's a no. We're going to pass on your company. You're not the right fit for QVC and you're not the right fit for our customers, but we wish you well. And I was like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I just tried to pour into another pitch. And he thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no, got off the phone. Okay. So then I cried myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. If you've ever had bad news and you like wake up in the morning and you hope it was a dream and you're like, oh, it wasn't, right? It was like that day after day after day. So fast forward another year, we're at a big beauty show and one of the QVC hosts tried our product. There were 6,000 women there. She tried our product and said, you need to be on QVC. She told the buyer, we got one shot. We got our first big yes, but what it meant, and this is one of the greatest life lessons and business lessons I've ever learned as it pertains to trusting your gut and staying authentic to who you are. We got one shot on QVC. And here's what it meant. We got a 10-minute window to go live in front of 100 million homes and sell our product. But what it also meant was, and at the time we were selling only 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Fulfilling them out of our living room, driving to the post office. So we're only selling 2 to 3 orders a day, barely staying alive. They ordered over 6,000 units of our concealer to sell in just a 10-minute window in order to hit their sales goal or not come back. And it was a consignment deal, which meant we weren't paid for any of it. And whatever sold, we got paid for, but whatever didn't sell would get shipped back to us. So it's like never, as an entrepreneur, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, we were like out of options. And it just felt like, you know what, let's just go all in. So we said yes. We applied for SBA loans. And I think the first 22 banks said no. Bank number 23 gave us an SBA loan to cover just the manufacturing costs of those 6,000 units. And so literally everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week early. And you know how a lot of times athletes will envision themselves on the podium or landing the triple axel or scoring the touchdown. Like you visualize stuff. I flew out there a week early and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And I just started envisioning everything. Like I was trying to pretend I was an athlete. And I was like visualizing everything I could, like the sold out sign coming up across the screen. And here's the moment that became hard. We hired third-party consultants that are amazing at helping people succeed selling on television. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have any shot at success, you need to use this type of model, which was the same type of model I'd seen in magazines my whole life. You need to do your sell this way. And I would argue with them. I'd say, okay, but that's not why I created the product. And also, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national TV so I can prove live the product works? And I would say oh my gosh, if I'm sitting at home and I am 70 years old, or I have hyperpigmentation or this skin challenge or this skin tone or this skin problem, if I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know it's going to work for me? And we would argue, and they wanted us to win. They wanted the best for us. And listen, this is the best advice we can give you. Here's what you need to do. And one thing I'll say is, had I realized that if you're ever going to do anything novel or new, or even if it's an idea that's been done a million times, but it's your take on it, of course, experts aren't going to think it's going to work, because subconsciously they only think things are going to work that they've already seen proven work, right? And I didn't know that for a long time. And they mean so well, but they're seeing it. Even though a lot of them are visionaries, they're only able to see what you're doing through their own lens of experience. And so anyways, long story short, I didn't have a chance to do it both ways. It was everything was on the line. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to stick with authenticity in my mission. But then when you're in a moment where everything's on the line and you might lose your entire company, it's really hard to just tune in and trust your gut, right? Put your own gut instinct on a pedestal instead of the expert's advice. And I sat in that car for a week and I stared at the front door of the QVC building. And I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I would either walk out bankrupt or with my whole life changed. And the more I prayed about it, I would sit there in that car, literally crying, trying to God, take this from me, because it feels so heavy, and just tell me what to do. And it came down to a couple of things. I imagined who my customer was, and I would just kind of imagine who she is watching at home. And for some reason, I kept imagining a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was too busy to remember she mattered and remember she's beautiful and that she's enough. And I just remember this moment where I was like, you know what? I would rather, if she's going to bless me with 5 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her look up on her TV screen and see me showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather that happen than me sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was I knew what I had to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And when the 10-minute clock started, we went live on the air. And by the way, John, when you probably know this, I didn't know this until I got there. When the 10-minute clock starts, you don't just get 10 minutes for sure. If you're a minute or two in and you're not selling enough, your clock cuts and it jumps down to 2 minutes. And you just lost 6 minutes. And it's the most stressful thing and most high pressure thing, right? Because they don't mess around. Like you hit sales goals or that's it, which is any business. But so the 10-minute clock goes up. It's like 9:59, 9:58.
Jamie, I got to stop you there for a second.
Yeah,
I want people to realize this, like your future depends on this moment.
Let's just pause in that moment, because I get a lot of questions from listeners who, because of the things that have happened in their past, they don't know how to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of questions about decision making and how to truly, in a situation like this, where you are burning through your entire life savings.
Yeah.
You have left your dream job. You have gotten no after no after no after no after no. How do you stay connected to your intuition in a situation like that? What tool do you have, or what advice can you give to somebody who's having trouble hearing what the right decision is in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I think that intuition is like a muscle that we build over time. And I think it's a lifelong journey that, to really learning how to hear it and to trust it. And one of the greatest tools, I think, is to think back to times in your life where maybe you had this gut feeling to do something and everyone around you said, don't do it. So you listen to them, you didn't trust yourself, and then think about what happened. Right. And then similarly, go back to a time where everyone was like, oh, no way, no way. And you're like, but I love him. I don't think he's lying. I think his phone really did break 5 times every weekend. He didn't disappear his phone. Like, right. Think about like that situation when everyone was telling you something and you didn't listen, or even your gut was telling you, right? And you didn't listen, and you think back to those times and you start to develop pattern recognition of how it felt in moments in your life when you trusted yourself or didn't, and what happened, and you get better attuned to what that feels like. So
what does it feel like for you in both situations? Like, can you describe what it feels like for you when you're like, yep, no, that's a no?
Yes.
And what does it feel like for you when you're like, I'm sticking with this?
Yeah. Often it's the tiniest of feelings in my gut, right? Some people describe it as like a still small voice. I pray about it. I ask God to give me the answers and I try to live the answers.
Do you feel the answers that God gives you? Like, is that what happens for you when you do this?
Like right now when I look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you're a beautiful soul, right? I just know it. You know it. You feel it. Like I feel like you have good, like you're good. You know what I mean? It's a feeling, right? And we get these feelings, but so much around us is so loud, and we just learn over time. And by the way, this could be a whole other episode, but especially as women, from the time we're young, we learn not to trust ourselves. We walk in to our parents fighting and we go, is everything okay? They're like, everything's great. Everything is great, right? To protect us, we start to learn to doubt ourselves,
baloney.
right?
Yep.
But or, especially as young girls, you learn to make decisions by consensus, often with your friends. And
making other people happy.
Making other people happy. People pleasing. We're rewarded for pleasing everyone else and almost ignoring what we feel. So if you're someone who's an adult right now going, I don't even know how to hear my own gut or trust myself, that's why we've been trained out of learning how to do it, right? So it takes intentionality and really deciding, oh, you know what? I'm going to put in some time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just to thinking about moments in my life where I trusted myself, where I didn't. And if you don't remember any of them, start now.
You know what you just inspired me to think about? I don't even know if it's possible to do this, but imagine if you could go through the rest of today and only make decisions that align with what you truly want. If you don't want to go to that party tonight, don't go. If a friend asks you something and you feel obligated out of guilt to lend them that thing, don't actually lend them the thing.
Yeah.
Eat what you want to eat tonight for dinner. Don't just go to wherever your friends want to go. Like, I think that would be a real eye-opening experiment if you were to do that.
and you start building that muscle, right? And the more you do that, some people don't even pay attention to what they actually want to eat for dinner. They're just like, what sounds good to everyone? But to your point, when you start paying attention, then you also start building that knowing of hearing your own knowing.
Do you think it's possible to discover your unique purpose in life if you are not connected and listening to your intention and intuition, I mean?
And your own intuition. Here's how I think it's way more likely, and you're going to actually discover more than one purpose often if you're really tuned in to your intuition and you're intentional about it. But what I'll say for someone who feels like they can't hear their gut, but they still want to find their purpose, a friend of mine, Rory Vaden, says that you're best positioned to serve the person you once were. Right. Trent Shelton, our friend, says one day the things you're going through right now will be the things you made it through.
Yeah.
And what I would say to someone listening right now is look at something in the past that has broken your heart, that has caused you grief, that has been something that you care deeply about, whether it's positive or negative, that you've gone through, something you care deeply about, or maybe pain you've gone through, something you have made it through. I believe often when we go through the hardest times in our life, it's for one of two reasons.
What are they?
It is to either equip us with the strength we need to carry the weight of our success that's to come, to carry the weight of our purpose that's to come, or we've gone through these horrible, unspeakable times, things we would never want to happen to us again in our life, because we're actually going to get our greatest source of fulfillment and purpose by one day helping someone else who's going through them. And
I love that saying that you're best equipped to help the person you used to be.
Yes.
There's so much there, and I want you to keep going. A couple things I want to unpack there. Number one is this unrealistic image for women. It's really interesting. With men, it really isn't that way. If you look at football, Tom Brady has a few ads. He's the good-looking dude, right? He's got a watch ad or whatever. But the guy that got all the ads was Peyton Manning. It was the everyman when it comes to men. With women, these unrealistic images, especially in the beauty industry, for the most part, are the images that we see. And so you really did revolutionize an industry. That's number one. Number two, it's interesting to me that your dream was to be a broadcaster. I got to tell you, we both bagged groceries at Safeways, and I was a broadcasting major in college, and that was my dream. I didn't know it was going to show up 30 years later, after my entrepreneurial journey. But I think life starts after your first dream goes away. I really believe that's where you're defined. And I'm so curious about this journey with the rejection. I have a philosophy. I don't know if you agree with this. I love the title of your book, Believe It, because what you're talking about, turning up this volume on your inner voice and turning down the external rejections. Those rejections you got were over and over again. I was telling my son this, who thinks he wants to be an entrepreneur. He said, Dad, what's one of the things that most people wouldn't tell you? I said, I don't know, that maybe the most important thing is your ability to deal with rejection as an entrepreneur. We talk about vision, we talk about, communication, but can you deal with the rejection? And in your case, it broke my heart, but there was one meeting you had where you thought you had a deal finally, right? With this VC guy. And I want you guys just to feel the depth of the rejection that you may experience as an entrepreneur. And could you do what Jamie did and still push back? So picture years and years of rejection. You're running out of cash. You're working out of your living room. Everyone's telling you no. And then this dude almost says yes, but then really hits you with a hard no. Tell him about that.
Yeah. And I thought literally he was going to be my saving grace, right? Because again, we were down to no money, and we got interest from a private equity company, and they loved our products. Our product worked, like it really worked. So they loved the product, and they wanted to have meetings. So we started going down that path, and they were really big. I mean, they are really big. They've invested in a ton of consumer product companies that you and I buy at the grocery store, and they made a lot of them household names from nothing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if they invest, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they'll help get me into all these retail stores that keep telling me no and keep telling me I'm not the right fit and all that. And so, we did meeting after meeting, and we started the diligence phase, which is, where you show all your projections, your product pipeline, everything. And it got down to the last meeting, and my husband, Paulo, and I flew up for it. And I thought, this is it. This is going to be it. And I'll never forget, the head guy was standing about 3 feet from me. And he thanked me. He said, that We should be proud of the product we created. And then he says to me, and he's about 3 feet from me, face to face. And he says, so I want to let you know it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. And I said, okay, like I'm used to hearing no at this point, right? And I'm like, all right, well, can you tell me why? Because usually feedback is a gift, usually. And I'm like, can you tell me why? And he's like, do you want me to be really honest? And I said, yeah. And I'll never forget, like, I remember just like him looking at me for a minute, and I remember feeling my heart racing really fast. And then I remember seeing his lips move in slow motion. And he basically said, he did say straight to my face, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight.
Wow.
And I remember it was this moment where for me, it was almost like this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt kind of like flooded my body, and almost felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye, listening to him. And I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. But Ed, in that moment, like, it's wild. I actually, it hurt. Like, I literally went in my car in the parking lot and cried my eyes out. Those things hurt. But what stands out to me in that moment, and I actually never felt, I didn't get mad at him. I still am not mad at him. Because guess what? The whole reason, that whole why beneath the why on why I was doing this company, like, he literally passed on investing in my company because he had the exact same mindset, right? That everyone else does about what you have to look like, the box you have to fit into to be successful. And he's just as much I don't want to say victim, byproduct maybe of the whole beauty industry too. He's passing on an investment in my company because of my weight. And I remember this moment, but the thing that sticks out to me most is in this moment, I had this feeling, this deep feeling, like, as he's telling me this, that he's wrong. And I had that feeling, but I knew nothing yet that I had done proved that, because I had no sales yet, really. And I also knew, like, proving it would first and foremost hinge on me believing it for myself. And, fast forward. And by the way, in the years after that, like, it's discipline of recognizing when someone else's voice is playing in your head all of a sudden. And I listened to a show you did actually where you scratch it, and right. And that's what I have to do over and over. Like, I'd have to literally get really good at turning down the volume on those things because, and I want to tell you a full circle moment that happened. It was so good. But like, I feel like that, what you just shared about telling your son this advice, right? I feel like that's everything, because I feel like so many people, what ends up happening is everyone else's rejections, right, end up like equating to self-doubt in our own head, our own self-doubt about ourselves. We start to turn the volume up on that to the point where with all of it, with everyone else's opinions, and in my case, the lack of success around me, it can get so loud that we can't even hear our own internal knowing anymore. And I feel like so many people, and then your friends and your family, like, they mean the best, but they're seeing you through their own lens of fear and inexperience, right? And so between all of it, so many people, I feel like, end up literally talking themselves out of their own calling and talking themselves out of their own truth and staying in their comfort zone at like the cost of it chipping away at their soul. We've all done this. And literally missing out on the person they're born to be. Wow. And I feel like and my story is like years and years and years of rejection. But when I look back at the things I did wrong and the things I did right, usually like my biggest mistakes came down to when I actually didn't listen to something I knew in my gut. And I decided to go with something an expert had told me when it didn't feel like quite right. And the biggest successes are when I really listened to that knowing, even when it went against what other people told me. So like, this guy telling me this, had I changed who I was, right, and tried to fit some mold that he said would sell, if that was who I was authentically, then great. But it's not for me, right? And so had I ever conformed to him, or any of those retailers that told me change this, change that, and maybe we'll bring you into our store, or L'Oreal that for 3 years of meetings said no and all the things I needed to do differently. Had I listened to most of any of that, especially the parts that didn't align with my gut instinct, I would have never sold my company for over $1 billion. I probably would be out of business. So that's
you hear yourself when you say this, Jamie, where you're like, I would have never sold my company for $1 billion. Still, when that comes out of your mouth, is there a part of you like, I sold my company for over $1 billion? Does it still hit you a little bit?
On one hand, I still can't process it. On the other hand, you'll understand this when I say this, and you won't judge me for saying this. And I believe actually everyone in your community.
Yeah.
I believe they're part of your community because they'll understand this too. Selling your company for $1 billion is exciting, but like for me, I don't feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with anyone else. I feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with who God made me capable of becoming.
Amen.
And I feel like I'm just getting started. Like I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
So selling a company for $1 billion is exciting, but like, I feel like stepping into all of who I am and serving and giving and all the things I'm really called to do, I still feel like I'm not there yet. By the way, you talked about.
I feel like having watched you speak a couple times and then listening now, I feel like all of that happened, all of the struggle, all of the ups and downs, all of the selling of the company, all you've learned, all you've been able to articulate, your broadcast background, all of that stuff is leading you right now to your time. Like I think you are called for what you're doing now, which is teaching and inspiring people and giving them hope. However, you did say it came full circle. Yeah. What did you mean when you said that? What's the full circle?
Ed. Okay, you love this. Okay, so this is so good because I actually never got mad at him, right? Because for me, it was like something bigger than him.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years, and when we actually ended up selling to L'Oreal, it was their largest U.S. acquisition in their history, and so it made the homepage of Wall Street Journal, a bunch of stuff like that. And the day that the deal was announced, I got an email from him, and he said, congratulations, I was wrong, so proud of you. That whole thing he did, and also I learned that it would. So two things I learned: it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history. But here's the thing, and this is where our setbacks, I feel like, oh my gosh, our setbacks, even when they suck, like it sucked to hear him say those words to me. It hurt. I cried. Like it hurts, right? Rejection in almost any form basically says to us, you're not enough. You don't belong. You're not worth, I don't think I will make money off you, or I don't believe in you, or it comes in all those forms and it sucks. But I really believe even almost all the time, when I look back at almost all the rejections, I feel like that, like, again, those setbacks really are setups. And sometimes rejection is really like serendipitous grace, wrapped in this package labeled painful rejection. And what I mean by that is I was so desperate at the time. I think you just posted, I just saw your thing where you're like, scarcity is value. Yeah. So yeah, I had no scarcity back then. I would have given him like any part of my company. We were down to under $1,000 in our bank account. I didn't know how we were going to survive. Had he wanted to invest, had he said yes to us that day, I would probably give him the majority of the company for probably almost no money, just hoping to survive. But because he didn't believe in me, and because we got so much rejection along the way, when we ended up selling to L'Oreal 8 years into the business, I was still the largest shareholder.
That's awesome.
And so, right?
I love this. Serendipitous grace. I may steal that from you. That is beautiful. And you guys have to say something. That's why you want to get this book. It's loaded with information like this. It's loaded with stories like this about believing it. Why do you need to believe it? Let's just unpack this rejection thing, and then we're going to get to a magic moment. The reason that I think your ability to deal with rejection is so important, it's not talked about enough. Let's just be honest. You know why 99.9% of dreams die, everybody? You eventually get too much rejection. So if that's the thing that's going to cause you not to get your dream, 99.9% of the time, it's just there becomes a threshold that people don't take the rejection long enough. So they don't stick around to receive the grace. And so if that is true, if we already know that going in, then why not pre-negotiate in the in the very beginning, what price you're willing to pay. Hopefully it's anything, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, so that the 99.9% of the reasons why your dream won't happen, you've already set in your favor if you've just decided you'll take the rejection. That's why it's such a big part. How do you take the rejection? You got to believe it. And that's why this book is so powerful. So we lead to this point, guys. And again, the beautiful thing about Jamie's story is it's her vulnerabilities and her authenticity that made the brand relevant, all the way up to the extreme magic moment. Don't hide your insecurities. Don't hide your blemishes, guys, figuratively and literally in your entrepreneurial journey. Get people wanting to root for you. Your fears and insecurities are what connect you with the marketplace. Ironically, you don't have to hide them. You can work on them, but there's nothing wrong with saying I have them. So finally, somehow, you get this moment on QVC, right? And you are so brilliant in this moment. You ask them, I'll let you tell the story, but to me, it's like, if you don't do this thing, again, maybe it still doesn't hit all the way to the last second, the last moment. It was your vulnerability that connected you with the audience. So everyone listen so closely to this woman who sold her company for $1 billion plus. So here we go. Take us to the moment.
So yeah, one of the biggest lessons in my whole life came down to this moment where we finally got a shot on QVC, right? And so, we had heard no from them for a couple years. And even Ed, I got their head guy named Alan Burke, who'd built this $1 billion division in QVC of beauty. And he's a legend, like an icon. After, 2 years of no's from them, I finally got him on the phone. And I thought, oh my gosh, if he's giving me a few seconds of his time, like this is good. Like it's going to be a yes finally. And I'll never forget, on the phone, he says to me, we've reviewed your products with our whole buying team and it's unanimous. You're not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. And so instantly I go into like, oh, but I am the right fit. Let me tell you why. And I start pitching my heart out. Right. And he thanked me for loving QVC, and it was a no. So that was like one of the most memorable nights, because I don't know if you've ever had, bad news in business or something like that. And you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh, fuck, it's like you hoped it was a dream.
Yes.
and it wasn't, right? It was like that for 3 days in a row. I just knew in my gut we're supposed to be on QVC. And it's so, and I knew for years, because I thought, Ed, oh my gosh, I can go live. And unlike all those ads I've seen my whole life that I don't even know if they're real. Like, let me show real women, like my mom and my friends and let me show real women. And I believed it. And yet everyone kept telling me no. And finally to get Alan Burke on the phone and hear, literally, I'm not the right fit. When you hear those words, it sucks, right? And by the way, like anyone who's ever been told they're not enough and is tempted to believe it is why I wrote this book. Because there's a lot of people that work really, really hard. And there's a lot of people that still don't quit. They keep going. But like making that decision to believe that you can and that your dream's possible, for me, that's huge. And I just made the decision to believe it. And and every time I got rejected, whether it was from Alan Burke at QVC or any of the retailers for year after year after year, I would still approach them as if it was going to be a yes and send them sales updates and send them product launches. And they're like, who the F is that? And I'd keep I just made that decision. So 3 years into this, we finally got this yes on QVC. And what happened with this yes and this one shot is literally one of the single greatest lessons I've ever learned in life and in business. So what this meant was we had one chance to sell our product in this 10-minute window live on QVC. And, for anyone unfamiliar with QVC who might be listening, it's a live television show and it's broadcast to 100 million homes. There's no script, no teleprompter. And what I learned, Ed, right before I went on, is that you're given 10 minutes in the case of the segment I got, but that's not a guarantee, right? If you go live and let's say a minute or two in, you're not hitting the sales goals, your clock cuts live. So you might be a minute or two in thinking you have 8 minutes left and you're not doing well. Boom, you're down to 1 minute. And you can calculate in your head how much money you just lost and what that means. So we get one shot, we get a yes. And this is huge, right? Because I knew in my gut, this is supposed to happen. And I'm going to show real women live. I'm going to shift culture and beauty. I knew it. And here's what happened. We got a purchase order and I quickly learned, we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Packing them from our living room, just trying to survive, down to no money. Well, for a 10-minute window at QVC, we had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer to hit their sales goal or not come back, and their consignment in beauty. So what it meant was, if we didn't hit those numbers, we didn't sell in that 10-minute window, everything that we didn't sell got shipped back to us and we weren't paid for it. Oh. So, and you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. Yeah. But in this case, it was like, we didn't know how we were going to make it either way. So I thought, okay, this is our one shot. This is going to be life-changing, right? So we hired these third-party consultants that are amazing, and they're experts, and they help a lot of people sell on television and in retail stores. And, we worked with them on, okay, how do we produce our 10-minute window? And the craziest thing happened, right? When we know what we stand for and we think that we're going to stand for it when it comes down to everything on the line, but then someone else tells you that that's not going to work, it's really hard not to question our own values and not to question our own intuition. These experts told me, in order to succeed, here's what you need to do. You need to use this type of model. And it was the perfect flawless skin, the models I'd always seen in TV ads. And I would say to them well, but that's actually not why I created this brand. And I would tell them, imagine if you're 70 years old sitting at home and you see someone you can't even relate to that doesn't look like you. How do you know the product's going to work for you? Or, I have rosacea, or 70% of people have hyperpigmentation. If they don't see someone that looks like them, and we would get into it and argue and fight, and they wanted me to win. But they were literally giving me the very best advice through the lens of their own experience. And the thing that I wish I knew, that I know now, but this would have saved me so many nights crying myself to sleep, is sometimes even experts, even the people that are touted visionaries, right? And they really are, and they would never admit this, but they still often can't imagine in their subconscious something succeeding if they haven't seen proof that it has before, right? And that would have made the rejection sting a lot less, because if you're doing anything authentically, anything that hasn't been done before, anything differently, people often can't even imagine it succeeding because of their own, right? And so all of them told me to do it. And they're like, listen, and we would fight. We got into it, and they're like, we want you to win. So I was in this moment where I flew out to QVC in Pennsylvania a week early before this one shot on live TV to either, hit their sales goals or basically go out of business. And I went all alone and sat in this rental car in the QVC parking lot because it literally felt so heavy. I knew what my gut was telling me to do, but in that moment, I hadn't seen any proof that it was right. No proof in the form of sales anywhere. I mean, we're doing 2 to 3 orders a day for 3 years in. No other retailer saying yes. Everyone telling me you're not this enough or that enough. But those moments in life where we still have that knowing, it's so easy to doubt it. And it's so easy to think we're wrong and to not trust it anymore. And I sat in this rental car praying and crying and literally asking God to take this from me because it felt so heavy. I felt like everything came down to this moment. Honestly, I was tempted to go against my own gut. I was like, okay, well, maybe if I listen to what they're saying, right? Yeah, maybe I'll do that and I'll do really well for a while, then I'll try it my way. And I just sat in that car and it didn't feel right. And I just kept praying about it. And I would imagine who my customer was on the other end. And for some reason, I don't know why, I kept imagining this single mom in Nebraska who was folding laundry and way too busy to remember that she mattered and that she's beautiful. And I just had this moment I'll never forget the rest of my life in that car, that rental car, where I was like, it was just it hit me like a ton of bricks, where I was like, you know what? I would rather go on live television. If she's going to give me 2 seconds of her precious time and look up at her TV screen, I would rather her see me up there showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it, and have her buy nothing. I'd rather do that than sell a shitload of product and like stand for nothing. So I knew what I had to do, but sometimes when we know what we have to do, it doesn't mean it's easy to do it. And honestly, like I was freaking out. I was so prepared. I had this demonstration on my wrist I was going to do that shows how our product doesn't crease and the top 2 department store ones do. And I get to the live studio, I walk in, we have our 10 minutes, and I go out there on the set live with the host, and I'll never forget, Ed, the clock was like, it was at 10 minutes, and it's like 9:59, 9:58, like, shit, like I'm on live, like this is happening, right? And I was trying to, and I felt literally sweat all the way dripping down everywhere. I didn't want to talk about that. I was free, and I'm not nervous for television, but everything was on the line. And I was trying to do this demonstration. I had practiced a million times in my bathroom mirror, and my hand was like this. And I was trying so hard to do it. And the host was like, "Thank you, sugar." And she pushed it under. And I remember the moment my bare face,
yes,
bright red rosacea came up on national television, right? And I remember walking over to these real women and calling them beautiful and meaning it. And there was about like 1 minute left in the cell, in the 10-minute segment. And the host was like, "The deep shade is almost sold out. The tan shade, we're down to 200. I was like, and then I remember literally right at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up diagonal, like across the screen, and tears like start streaming down my face. And I remember my husband, Paulo, he came rushing through the double doors, and I'm like sobbing, and I'm like, "Real women have spoken." And he's like, "We're not going bankrupt." And I was like, "Ah!" And that one airing turned into 5 that year, 101 the next year. And then we did 250 live shows a year. So I've done over 1,000 live shows myself on QVC. And we grew the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And it is right now at this moment, to this day. And I only share that because it was 3 years, right, of them saying no, and you're not the right fit. And no one can tell you you're not the right fit. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like we hear those, every one of us has heard that in some form or another, that you're not the right fit or you're not enough. And I feel like those aren't the moments where you give up. Those are the moments like you get back up, and with God and grace and grit, like you keep hustling and you keep going and you keep following your knowing. And one more little thing to share with you, just on the topic of full circle moments. Alan Burke, who's the head legend, after we launched on QVC, right? He's the one that said no, and I was crying myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. And he told me I'm not the right fit for QVC, all that kind of stuff. After we launched on QVC, I ended up getting to know him really well. And he became not only a dear friend, but literally one of my greatest mentors in my entire career. He is right now, to this day, one of my greatest mentors. And, you know, he's the one that built that billion-dollar beauty, multi-billion-dollar empire at QVC for beauty. When he retired from QVC, we hired him in a paid position on our advisory board. So Ed, the guy that rejected me, was now working for me. Like, no one can tell you you're not the right fit, right? And so, anyways,
you're amazing. You guys, listen to me on this. I went and I got to say that I love you. It's one of the great stories of all time, told by the person still living it. Why do you need to get the book? I'm not selling the book, guys. I'm just telling you. Why do you want to get the book? Why do you want to follow Jamie? Because she really did it. Do you know how rare it is in the business, entrepreneur, self-help space that it's not someone theorizing about things they think would probably work, but they've never applied? She did this. So what's in this book is gold. You don't have a lot of people on earth who have done what she's done. And then even fewer are like, let me teach you how I did it and how I think. It's very rare. And it's why today's such a gift to be doing the show with you. I have to just tell you, it's interesting because we've met a couple times in green rooms or backstage and different things. And just so you know, Jamie is so kind and has so much humility. And you can't find anyone anywhere who has a bad word to say about her. She's just a beautiful spirit. And so I knew the story a little bit. And then I knew you were going to be on the show. So I was prepping. I already know the work that went in, and I know the result, but I went and watched the clip when you showed your rosacea, right? Yeah. And I found myself, even though I know what happens, I was like, got butterflies in my stomach for you now, even though it's years later. I'm kind of saying quiet prayers for you, and I already know that you won, but it's such a poignant moment to go through all of that rejection. And I think you're giving so many people hope that you stuck to your guns about your beliefs as well.
I'd love to talk about the sale Because you said, you'd met with L'Oreal 3 times. So how long did it take? So you launched, was it 2009 on QVC? 2008?
2010 on QVC. Yeah, September of 2010. September 10th, I think, to September 2010 though. And we were acquired by L'Oreal in 2016. So they paid $1.2 billion cash. But that wasn't the first offer. It was how it happened. So the real truth is there were so many things I think that I did wrong growing the business, so many things that thankfully I did right. And one of the things I was never able to truly figure out for myself was how to not become totally burnt out. And like meaning I drove everything so hard, including myself. I was so burnt out for a number of years. I actually, not to end the interview on a down note, but I'm just going to keep it so real because I have so much respect for every founder and every person with big dreams on their heart. And if sharing this helps someone feel less alone, then it's worth it. But the truth was, I think I know I became completely addicted to work. And my husband did as well. And so we were in this spot where all of a sudden we had all of this amazing growth. We had 7 million paying customers in the US. I mean, everything was spreading. It was beautiful. Our team was so much smarter than I am. It was like all of these parts were so incredible from the outside. But on the inside, I knew I was burnt out. I knew that, and my husband was too. We were both doing 100-hour weeks. I felt I was living by this feeling of I've got to strike while the iron's hot. Almost like a version of imposter syndrome where I couldn't believe this was happening to me. Like after so much rejection for so many years, like processing that all this success was happening, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's going to come crashing down at any second. So I've got to keep striking while the iron's hot. And I drove myself so hard and was so burnt out. And there was a moment that I remember where, my husband had called, I looked at my cell phone, and in that moment, when I looked at his name on my phone, I equated it automatically as a work call. And I had realized that everything in my life revolved around work. And while I hope and believe I was really good at building a business and leading a team and all of this, and loving our customers, obsessing about our customers, I also realized I was not a good steward of health or of a marriage or a body or any of those things. And so in this moment of realizing oh, we're super addicted to work. I think if I continue to live this way forever, I will regret it and miss my whole life. And so we were considering, do we go public? But in knowing that all of my friends who have gone public say oh, it's even more work. Now you have your earnings calls and you have everyone shorting your, you have all this stuff going on. So I was like, okay, I think we need to partner, be acquired or partner, because we were starting to launch internationally. We had launched into Sephora in Southeast Asia and Australia and Thailand. And we were launching from our team, trying to do it everywhere, which I realized okay, we can figure this out, but at a much slower pace than if we partner with someone like L'Oreal that has teams on the ground in over 100 countries. So, we'd started taking exploratory meetings. L'Oreal reached out first, actually. Oh, no, that's not true. I sent their head of US luxury a big product basket because I'd heard her give a talk. I was kind of ballsy this way. I don't know if I can use that word on your show, but
of course,
you just got to go for it, even if you risk looking silly or whatever. But I remember sending the head of US at L'Oreal years before we met. I sent her, I'd heard her give a talk where she listed her top 10 favorite products of all time. And I sent her a note saying I loved your talk. The only problem was IT Cosmetics wasn't on your list. And I know if you actually tried IT Cosmetics, it would be on your top 10 list. And so I wrote this whole thing and sent her a package, and I didn't know if she ever got it. Well, then fast forward, it must have been a year or so, she reached out for a meeting. And I was like, So right away, I thought L'Oreal wants to buy us, like right away. But then I didn't realize it would be 3 years of the meetings escalating to Paris and everyone involved, and they always ended in a no and not the right fit. And so we did lots of different meetings, and then eventually we got really far along in the process, in the acquisition process with L'Oreal, and they made us an offer for the first time. And it was wild because after years of them saying no, they made us this amazing offer that, like, when I saw it, I mean, I couldn't even fathom. When I was a waitressing at Denny's, I couldn't have even imagined an offer like that. But what happened that was so serendipitous and grace-filled for us is the moment they finally made an offer, something was happening in the beauty space where another brand was up for sale, and everybody that didn't get that brand came after us. So all of a sudden, we had all these other inbound offers coming, and this was all. So we brought on Goldman Sachs, and we actually did a process. And for L'Oreal's initial offer, we said no. So, and by the way, I didn't even know I knew how to say the word no. I only knew how to hear the word no. But we said no, and then because we were getting other offers that were larger, and so then they came back with a way bigger offer that we felt really beyond amazing about, and we said yes. And so it was 2016 when they bought 100% of this little company I started in my living room, and it was wild. It was they paid $1.2 billion cash. They made me the first woman to hold a CEO title of a brand in their 107-year history at the time. And I gave them my word. I didn't have anything tying me to this financially, but I gave them my word I would stay on for 3 years. And I kept, by the way, even after all this, I kept working 100-hour weeks. Like, it was just like my nature. Like, but we doubled the size of the business the first 2 years post-acquisition. And then at the 3-year mark, I made the decision, because it's like such a well-oiled machine now, you know what I mean? Like, and I made the decision to write my first ever book called Believe It, and just it's really stories about how to go from underestimated to unstoppable. And I'm kind of in this place now where I'm so grateful to be talking with you, because I think when we can use all of the challenges and struggles and real stories and learnings and lessons we've been through to hopefully save someone else at least one night crying themselves to sleep, or money or time, I think that's when it becomes even more fulfilling and purposeful that we've had the kind of journeys, even not just the ups, but also the downs. It makes them so much more purposeful. And so I'm honored to be here with you and sharing all of this today. So.
Yeah, wow. What an incredible story.
Would you mind just sort of talking through broadly who you are, what you do, who your people are, where you are, and kind of what and we'll get into this. You could just touch down on this, but sort of like what your personal mission kind of is as you are moving through the space that you've built.
Yeah. Well, most people probably know me as the founder of It Cosmetics, or, that when you Google my story, you'll see like Denny's waitress builds $1 billion company. But my real story, Jen, is a girl who went from kind of having that feeling inside, like God put a calling on my heart, like there was things I was supposed to create or ideate, but I doubted myself most of my life. So like my real story is a girl who went from doubting she's enough to kind of like learning how to know she's enough. And most of my life, I didn't know how to hear my own intuition.
Same.
And so learning how to hear it and trust it has kind of been my real story. And I have two babies. My daughter Wonder is 3 years old, and my son
Wonder.
is 1.
I can't.
And I am, most passionate about just learning to get still, trying to hear how God tells me to show up and serve, and then trying to live out the answer. So for a big portion of my journey so far, that came in the form of trying to change the beauty industry.
Yeah.
And then
no big deal.
no big deal.
Right.
And most recently, through writing Believe It, it's really just been about hoping to use everything I've gone through and the mistakes I've made, the things I did wrong and right. To just try and help everyone else on their own journey or serve however I can. And, everyone else's journey that might be similar to mine, which is dealing with self-doubt and how do you break through it and how do you, become the person you're born to be. And that's kind of my greatest passion right now. So
I have a million questions. You alluded to it right now, but for people who haven't heard your story yet, or they haven't done the Jamie Google search, can you talk about what your life looked like before you decided, I'm going to start a cosmetics line. I'm going to build a whole brand. I'm going to build my own company. Because all those are almost in different categories. I mean, there's entrepreneurship in general, and then there's the beauty industry, which is its own beast. So would you mind just going backwards a little bit and saying, this was where I was, what I was doing and what I was thinking. This is where maybe I thought my life was going to go, or whatever plans I had already made. And then what was it? Was there something, was there a catalyst or sort of a lightning in a bottle moment when you decided I am absolutely going to make a hard right here and do something completely different?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there was, it was a scary moment where I thought, oh, I'm not qualified and I have no money and no connections and I don't know how it's going to happen, but I keep having this feeling and I can't shake it. Yeah. So, so growing up, my parents worked a lot. They worked really hard and I was always alone a lot. And so I would watch Oprah in my living room growing up. And I always I fell in love with this idea of how she was able to share other people's stories. And I just thought from the time I was a little girl, like, oh, I'm going to grow up and share other people's stories with the world. And so I always thought that's what I would do. And that would be my dream job. And fast forward to my late 20s and early 30s. And I was working in what I thought was my dream job. So I was working in television news and, interviewing other people and anchoring the news and all that. And I went through this season that I thought was setback in my life. So, I developed a skin condition called rosacea, which for some people super mild. For me, it would I get huge kind of red bumps and welts all over my cheeks and forehead and nose, and gets to be like a sandpaper like texture. And when that started developing, I would be anchoring the news, and I would hear in my earpiece live from the producer, "There's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off." And they were just trying to have my back. Like, it was a real positive thing, but they're like, "Sure." Something. And I would be live on television, and I knew, Jen, that there was nothing I could wipe off, right? I knew what was happening was the makeup was breaking up and under the hot HD lights, and the redness was coming through. And so it started this season of kind of what felt like setback, where I would be live on TV and I'd be having thoughts like, are you going to get fired, or are you changing the channel right now? Are ratings going down? And it started this kind of quest where I started, trying every makeup product I could find out there, in hopes of not getting fired. And so the products in the drugstores and the department stores and the pro makeup artist lines, and a couple of things happened. One is that I couldn't find anything that would work. And so that was kind of frustrating, because it would either be really thick and look like a big mask, or it just wouldn't cover. And so that was frustrating, and I didn't know, what I was going to do about it. I went to all the dermatologists and learned there's no cure for it. And I tried all the prescription stuff and nothing was working. And so in the midst of all that, I think it's Joel Osteen that coined the phrase that our setbacks in life are so often our setups for what we're supposed to do next, or for greater callings on our life. And so this was really an example in my real life of a setback that was really a setup, and I just didn't know it at the time. Right? A lot of times we're in the seasons of setback and they just suck and hurt, and we freak out and all those things. And so I in the midst of trying to find a product that worked, I also kind of had this epiphany where I was like, wait a minute, I've never actually seen, because there's so many makeup companies, and I've never seen one showing a model with rosacea and showing a, and I'm like, why is that? And so a bunch of things happened at once. I started getting this kind of inkling, this gut feeling. Well, that would tell me, like, if you could create something that works for you, it'll probably help a whole lot of other people. So I kept having that feeling, that instinct in my gut or in my heart. But like what happens to so many of us, like the self-doubt in my head would say things like I was sharing earlier, like, you're not qualified. You're
not a scientist.
Yeah. You were a Denny's waitress and now you're a news anchor. What do you know about beauty? No one exactly. You're not a scientist, all those things. Right. So I sat in that place for a long time of having that feeling in my gut, but then my head talking me out of what I think was meant to be my truth and my path. Right. And I stayed there for a while. And I just couldn't shake that feeling. And the other thing that happened, which ended up becoming the real fire behind everything for me, was I had this big epiphany. And like, we always hear about people talking about their why and all of that. And I had this realization that, yes, I'd never seen any models with rosacea, but then I kind of realized my whole life, growing up, I always saw the beauty ads on TV and in magazines, and I always loved them, and I always aspired to look like them, but they also kind of always made me feel like I wasn't enough.
Sure.
And so it was wild that in the midst of this idea of what if I could somehow create a product that works for people with skin challenges like me, in the midst of that, I also had this big moment where I'm like, wait a minute, what if I do that? And what if I use real people as models, right? Like every age and shape and size and skin tone and skin challenge, and call them beautiful and mean it. And what if I could somehow like shift the definition of beauty in the beauty industry for every little girl out there who's going to see these ads and start doubting herself, and every grown woman and person who still does. And it was kind of this like big thing for someone sitting there feeling unqualified with like no idea how it's going to happen. So that happened. And I sat in that place for a long time though. And I think for so many of us, like this is, like our fears keep us in that place where we just stay stuck and don't go after the thing. And these how we handle these moments are the moments that change our life and define our life. And I did a lot of the things wrong in my journey, but one of the things that I did right was whenever I could clearly hear a gut feeling or my intuition, I made the decision to start trusting it.
So good.
And my honeymoon flight to South Africa, wrote the business plan with my husband, and which is the least romantic way.
Right. So spicy.
Yeah. And
let's make a spreadsheet.
Totally. Right. And we got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. Had very little savings, poured it all into product development and trying to figure out that piece of it. And then what I didn't know at the time, Jen, it would be 3 years at that point on, from the time we launched the company, it would be over 3 years before we could afford to pay ourselves. And also all these stores I love to shop in, Sephora, Ulta, department stores, QVC, I put them all on a pedestal. I thought, oh my gosh, if I create something that is life-changing for me, they're going to love it. And what I didn't realize is they would all say no hundreds of times for 3 years. So it was was 3 years of hundreds of no's, of not being able to afford to hire anybody, of by the day trying to build this thing out of my living room,
Oh my
and
gosh.
seeing no proof that my gut feeling was right for a long time. And most people don't know that. They just see It Cosmetics today.
Sure.
And it's wild, but it's the largest luxury makeup company in the US, which is just, it's wild to even say those words. But
It's
for the
amazing.
first 3 years, it wasn't just like one no or 5 no's, or it was hundreds of
Oh
no's.
my gosh.
And
So I love this so much. And I think I have a little bit of a brain and a will that must be similar to yours. I don't take no's. Well, I just don't take them, I guess. So I want to ask you this question. You said two things that I really like. The first one is the learning to trust your intuition, learning to trust your gut. That means a lot to me. I grew up in a environment, sort of, to be honest, in a spiritual construct where my personal intuition, my sense of direction, my gut, like you described it, was always, it described to me as being incredibly suspicious. That if it was something I thought or suspected or was leaning toward or even wanted, that kind of baked into that was a selfishness, or just I should disregard it because I couldn't trust myself. I had just sort of been taught that everything that I had in and of me was unworthy and unreliable. And so it took me a really long time, really, really long time. And I'm 46, and I feel like this is just something I have just reversed in my 40s. It took me that long to sort of uproot that bad plant.
I want to dig into something that you said because I think it's really important, and it'll be a little bit complicated to get this question out. But do you ever watch Shark Tank?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
Yes.
so do you know that there are times when there's an entrepreneur that has an idea, and the sharks are kind of giving them advice, and you can kind of tell it's good advice, and the entrepreneur's not really listening, and they're kind of digging in and not listening. How do you know the difference between when someone pushes back and you're like, no, I know I'm right, and you're actually not? They're actually giving you good advice, you're not listening, versus when there's something inside of you that you actually are right. Because in any great leadership story, intuition, discernment, that knowing is really, it's something important, it's incredibly, indescribably important, and it's really hard to teach. Can you help us? Because I'm sure someone right now, there might be getting some advice or some pushback, and the advice might be really good and they need to listen, or it might be really wrong. How do you know the difference?
Yes, that's such a good point. So yeah, because I've had so many rejections, right? In every single rejection, even though it often hurt, I considered everything they said, right? So when he said no in the investor case, I was like, well, can you tell me why? I want to hear the feedback always. And because I think often there is so much value in that feedback. And I think, for me, I love to just get still, pray about it, and say what truly feels right. And for me, I think this is important for everyone, building that muscle of intuition or discernment over what's right or wrong is so important, right? I think, one thing that's coming to mind is, from the time we're a little kid, we can walk into a room and kind of feel like, were they talking about me? Or we kind of feel if our mom or dad is not happy. And when we say, how are you? And they say, we're fine. You start to dull your own ability of hearing, of trusting that discernment, right? And we go through our whole lives without ever really being taught, how do you hear your own intuition? How do you have discernment? And so one of the things that I do for anyone looking to kind of build that muscle of intuition, because I think it's a muscle that we build over time, and I think it's a lifelong journey. And I think as a leader, it is so important. I think that You said something once, I heard you say, it was so powerful, that when we do something that offends everyone the least, it's often not the most effective thing as a leader, right? I would also say when we lead by consensus, it's often not the most effective decision.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think, for anyone in a position of leadership, really learning how to turn down the volume on all the noise and listen to your intuition. I believe it's so powerful. One of the things I do often is I take some time, and this is for anyone looking to build their muscle of intuition. I think back to times in my life where I just knew I was right. I had a gut feeling, but I didn't listen to it. And I think about what happened then in those cases. And by the way, these could be simple things like I was dating a guy and he said his phone broke.
Right.
And his phone didn't break, but you're like, oh, but you're in love. And you're like, oh, but maybe it broke and whatever, right? All of these, we have hundreds of thousands of moments like this in our lives, or we're with a group of friends and we just feel like something is wrong, or someone is hurting. And they're like, no, I'm fine. And we look back and we learn later, oh, they were, right? Or on the flip side, we times we've trusted ourselves and times we haven't, and what happened when we did in both occasions. And the more we reflect on those, the more we're able to build our muscle of intuition over time and really learn to trust ourselves. And what I want to say is, I truly, truly believe when we are on our true path and our true calling and our true journey, that every time you trust yourself in a decision, even if it turns out wrong, it was the right move. Every time. I believe every time you trust yourself, even when it turns out to be wrong, I believe it was part of your destiny to learn that experience and to learn that calling. So it was still the right decision to trust yourself.
For those folks who might be new to you and your work, I'm wondering if you can, this is the opening shot of the film here, ground us in Jamie Kern Lima's life.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah. And I want to say I'm honored to share like the story behind the story. You know what I mean? And I think that when you Google my life or my story, you see, oh, Denny's waitress builds $1 billion company. And it's kind of the highlight reel. And it seems like a fairy tale. And, part of why I wrote Believe It and part of why I'm so excited to do the show with you is I think that what I've realized over the years is when we just see like that headline, then, all of us as creators and, people with dreams or want to launch a business, we kind of feel like we're alone in our own rejections and failures. And I realized, I think that it's so important to share, all the stories behind the stories, because, we're all in this together as creators and ideators and all of that, and just people with dreams on our hearts. And so, my story, I was a Denny's waitress and have had a lot of other jobs as well. And I, kind of knew my whole life though, since the time I was a little girl sitting in my living room watching Oprah every day, I thought, oh, I want to share other people's stories as my job. And I always dreamed of that my whole life. And so I eventually was working in what I thought was my dream job. I was working as a television news anchor, and I was able to interview other people and tell their stories. And something happened to me, Chase, that I thought at the time was like a big setback. I developed this skin condition all over my cheeks and my face, and it called rosacea, which is hereditary. So there's no cure for it. And I would be anchoring the news live, and I would hear in my earpiece from my producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it off. And they were having my back, they were awesome. And they just wanted the best for me. And I was like, oh, but I knew there was nothing I could wipe off. I knew it was the makeup would be breaking up. And then under the hot HD lights, the bright red rosacea would be coming through. And so I went through this season that I thought was a big setback, where I started, really dealing with a lot of self-doubt and a lot of like, oh, am I going to get fired? And am I going to lose viewers and all the things? And so I saw dermatologists and learned there's no cure for it. And I spent my paycheck on pretty much every possible makeup product I could find, from like the super expensive department store ones that I couldn't afford at the time, all the way to the drugstore ones and the pro makeup artist products. And nothing would work. And it was this kind of moment where I got this inkling, like a lot of us who have created something or know we want to one day, like we get this feeling. And I got this feeling that did not make sense in my head, but it made sense in my gut that said, like, you know, if you can figure out how to create a product that works for you, it's probably going to help a whole lot of other people. But I'm sitting there chasing what I thought was my dream job. And I keep having this feeling that I'm supposed to like give up on my dream and start a new one. Even though I had no connections, I knew nothing about the beauty industry, had very little money. Anyone out there who's worked as a journalist will know you don't get paid very much. But it was this moment, and I think, you know, in the last decade in particular of my journey and my story, there's a lot of things I've done wrong, and I share all of those in my book for the first time. But there's also, like, when I look back at the things I did right, they kind of all come down to like the start of this moment where I, you know, made the decision to listen to my gut and to trust myself, even when it didn't make sense. And I kind of learned this lesson that, like, sometimes it's because we live in this culture where everyone's like, just don't quit, just don't give up. But I actually think that that's not the victory. I think the victory is learning to listen to our gut and, like, knowing that, you know, letting go of a dream sometimes is as important as knowing when to go after one. And it's the knowing, right? That's the victory. So I made the decision to quit my dream job and go all in on creating a business that I had no idea how to launch. And I had no idea how hard being an entrepreneur would be.
There's a quote that's attributed to Elon Musk, which is doing a startup is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. And
Yes.
when people, you know, I think it's been largely romanticized in our culture, starting your own business. But I imagine, just from what I learned in the book, and just to get it out there up front, your book is incredible. Congratulations. And I want to plug it hardcore here just in the first 10 minutes of our conversation, which it's called Believe It, How to Go from Underestimated to Unstoppable. And for anyone who's listening right now, this is, if you've got self-doubt, if you want to gain the courage to take these risks, the ones that Jamie started sharing just a moment ago and will share with us throughout the show, this idea of trust, managing rejection, whether that is, you know, even in your inner circle, your family, or, you know, what the world thinks, it's an absolute must read. I've read so many of these books from entrepreneurs, and yours is special and different. So thank you for writing it.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.